Morning. Thank you for joining me. We will get started. Precepts incense, samadhi incense, wisdom incense, liberation of views incense, cloud of lighted incense pouring into the dharma realms, offering to the highest teachers of the 10 directions. I respectfully bow the incense cloud bodhisattva. I respectfully bow to the incense cloud bodhisattva. I respectfully bow to the incense cloud bodhisattva. I respectfully bow to all directions of space, all realms, past, present, and future, all Buddhas, the honored Dharma, the enlightened Sangha, the permanent three treasures. I respectfully bow to our own teacher, Sakyamuni Buddha, the future born Maitreya Buddha, great wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva, great practice Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, Dharma protector Bodhisattvas, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas assembled at the great holy mountain. I respectfully bow to the great love, great compassion, Amitabha Buddha of the Western Paradise, great compassion, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, great vow, Siddhikarma Bodhisattva, great power, Mahastamaprada Bodhisattva, all the Bodhisattvas in the great pure ocean. Good morning, Jeff and Ellen and Catherine, and anybody else who's here. Hang on a second, turn on some light. It's a little dark in here because of the cloudiness. It probably won't really help much, but maybe a little bit. So, I don't know how it is where you are. I know at least one of you is in DeLand, but it's been rainy here all morning. So, which is fine. We need it. So, you know, as you know, a lot of people are, well, not a lot, a small group of people are at White Sands Buddhist Center today to observe Ullambana. And so it's kind of jointly face-to-face and online live streamed and stuff. So I wanted to talk about Ullambana a little bit for those of you who maybe don't know much about that. So this is a spiritually significant time in a lot of Buddhist cultures. In China, we're in what's commonly known as Ghost Month. And so, among other things, during this month or this period, and it's kind of vague because different cultures use different calendars, but you'll find a lot of Buddhist temples doing special services, which usually includes feeding the hungry ghosts. And so I want to explain this idea of hungry ghosts a little bit because you need this for the rest of the story. So when someone lives a life consumed by greed and craving, from addictions and so on, when they pass away, they may become a hungry ghost. So, you know, you live a life of craving, you're practicing craving the whole time. That craving continues to determines what your next form is. And so you're basically reborn out of craving. And so that logical thing is for it to take form as a hungry ghost. So these are spirits who live in a special realm. It's one of the lower realms, as you might imagine, and their bellies are cavernous, but they have little bitty mouths. And so they can never get full. And to make matters worse, when they try to eat, their food turns to something disgusting. And the exception, the sole exception to this, is when they receive food that's given to them as an offering from someone devout, like you. And then they can eat it. So feeding the hungry ghosts involves laying out some food for them, usually outside the temple or on a special altar set aside for the purpose. And then there's some chanting to call the ghosts in for a meal. And so at places like White Sands, we regularly offer food to the hungry spirits. And the offering goes something like this. We tell the hungry spirits to gather here. And we're saying, sharing your distress. We offer you this food, hoping it will resolve your thirsts and hungers. So we're saying that we recognize their suffering too, that we can sympathize with it. We know what craving is like, right? And we want to help them. And then we ask that those who receive the offering will in turn help others. And so we express our hope that that the offering will help them transcend their suffering so they can be reborn in a pure land where they can practice the enlightened way and eventually become Buddhists themselves and help others. And then at the end, we do this thing called sharing merit, where, Buddhists believe in karma, the principle that if you do a good thing, you get a good result. If you do a bad thing, you get a bad result. And so what we want to do is, we don't know what the results will be, but we know that helping others is beneficial. And so we don't want to be stingy with the results of our good actions. And so to feed someone, even a hungry ghost, is a good action. And so we recognize that we benefit from this offering ourselves. And so we express our intention to share whatever good results we get with others, so that our blessings don't just come to us, but they come to the whole world. So whether or not you believe literally in the existence of hungry ghosts is kind of irrelevant. To make the offering is a useful spiritual practice. And so we recognize that giving ourselves over to craving leads to a bad end. And we also recognize how others suffer because of their cravings. And so we can vow to help them if we can see how our own kindness can help us, but also help others who are less fortunate. And so, we do this offering at White Sands every Sunday. In this time of year, we do a special one at least once to help some of the hungry ghosts who are suffering the most to transcend the realm in which they currently reside. And so what you'll see if you go to a place like White Sands or a similar temple is you'll see people, there's usually a big table set up and people will bring in food to offer. And you'll see everything from bowls of rice to potato chips and frosted flakes and stuff like that. And then whatever monks are there will chant the offering. And so that's going on today and this evening. And then at White Sands and some other basically Chinese-based Mahayana and also Japanese-based, they'll burn something as offerings. And so they've been handwriting chapters of the Lotus Sutta to offer to the Buddha by burning them. And that offering then benefits the hungry ghosts also. So this observance, or something like it, is pretty universal in Buddhist traditions, where there's a period of anywhere from a few days to a month or so that's set aside to honor our ancestors. And the belief is that during this time, the gates of hell open on the first day of Ghost Month, and then ghosts can wander the world for that period of time. And they'll go to their former homes during this period. And so it's kind of like some of the Christian traditions, like All Souls Day. And you know what Halloween is, right? So it's kind of the religious origin of those is kind of similar in a lot of ways to this kind of activity. While it's fairly universal in Buddhist cultures, the commemoration of departed ancestors happens at slightly different times from one place to another because different countries use different calendars. And so in Thailand, the observation is called Sart, or Sart Day, and it falls in September this year. Moves around because they use a different calendar. In Japan, it's Oban, and it's in August, and it's always on the same date. Japan uses the same calendar that we do. And so that makes it a little easier to be a Japanese Buddhist because you know when things are. In some Mahayana traditions, including Vietnam, it's called Ullambana, and it happens during the 7th lunar month of the year. And so depending on what the lunar calendar looks like, it kind of moves around. So regardless of what it's called or what day it falls on, This is an opportunity to practice gratitude toward our parents and departed ancestors. And so the name of the observance, Ullambana, is taken from the title of the Ullambana Sutra, in which the Buddha talks about how we might be able to repay our parents and the care they gave us. Traditionally, this sutra appeared in India and then was translated into Chinese, but scholars now say it was probably written in Chinese, probably around the 6th century Common Era. In any case, it's become an integral part of Buddhist practice in a lot of places because it teaches two important concepts: the benefits of filial piety, caring for your parents and ancestors, and the value of generosity. And the ceremonies that grew from it just give us an opportunity to practice both. So Ellen says, please define craving. So were you online when I talked about the 12 factors of dependent origination? This was this past Wednesday, the recorded Dharma talk. So when something comes into our awareness that is pleasant or unpleasant, we tend to have some feeling arise toward it. Good feeling, bad feeling. Good feeling, we want more of it. Bad feeling, we want it to go away. So the feeling arises, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Then craving arises, wanting more, right? I want more of this. So you said chocolate and Diet Coke. So the thing is, let's say you decided you were going to quit drinking Diet Coke. And we won't even talk about quitting chocolate. but decide you're going to quit drinking Diet Coke because you figure out that the caffeine is bad for you or something like that. So you say, okay, I'm going to stop having Diet Coke. So here's what will happen. You'll open your refrigerator and there will be a can of Diet Coke in there, the one that you forgot to dump out when you decided you were going to quit. And so this comes into your awareness. Okay, the sight comes in through the can of Diet Coke comes into your awareness via the visual sense door, and then this feeling arises. I like Diet Coke. Okay, you might even be aware suddenly of what Diet Coke tastes like, and then so you start to want the Diet Coke. And then the craving comes when you think you need the Diet Coke, all right? Seeing it, not a problem, really. That triggers a feeling. Feeling, maybe it's a problem. It's a problem if it turns into clinging and then craving. You could say, yeah, I like Diet Coke, but I also like to not have headaches that the caffeine gives me or whatever it is that you're dealing with. And so maybe you call Jeff and say, hey, Jeff, drink this Diet Coke so it's not here to tempt me anymore, right? Or you just throw it in the trash, or you give it to the neighborhood center, or whatever it is that you do to it to get it out of the way so that it's not triggering that anymore. Or you go, boy, I really like Diet Coke, man. I wish I really like Diet Coke. And then I got to have Diet Coke. So when you give in to craving, you teach your mind to give in to craving. When you don't, when you go, oh, I see that, I like that, but I don't want that in my life, let me let that go. Then the craving starts to, caffeine is actually good for like relieving headaches and stuff. I'm not down on caffeine at all. I consume caffeine. I'm using this as an example, right? So, where was I? When you teach your body and mind to just give in to craving, then you continue to perpetuate the cycle of craving, and eventually it's going to lead to suffering. Now, look, maybe your craving for Diet Coke extends to like one Diet Coke a day, and you're not having any health problems as a result of drinking Diet Coke. I drink about one Diet Dr. Pepper a day, typically, something like that. It's not really causing any problem. But if you got to the point where you had to have a Diet Coke in your hand all the time. Now maybe it's not good for you. Now maybe there's too much caffeine. Now maybe it's affecting your heart. Now maybe it's affecting your kidneys, things like that, right? So if you let craving really dominate your actions, then that's where this turns into the sort of hungry ghost world. And there are people out there who live their lives based on their cravings, right? And so those are the people who turn into hungry ghosts. So anyway, it's a good question, and I'm glad you asked that. It's not just wanting. There's this idea that the source of suffering is desire, and it is, but you also desire things that are good for you. If you desire to become enlightened, that's still enlightened, still desire, right? So the desire that leads to suffering, okay? So, and any desire can do that if you allow it to dominate you. So anyway, the Ullambana, back to the Ullambana Sutra, it's not too long. And so I'll tell you the story briefly. The Buddha had two key disciples, Sariputta and Moggallana. I'm using the Pali versions. Yeah, I do like Dr. Pepper. I'm not sure you're human if you don't like Dr. Pepper, but that's a whole other Dharma talk. Anyway, Sariputta and Moggallana. And in if you go into Theravada temples, a lot of the times you'll see the big gold Buddha in the center, and then smaller monks either side of him, and that's Sariputta and Moggallana. If you're at a Mahayana temple, it's probably a little different. He's probably flanked by some bodhisattvas, but in a Theravada temple, that's common. His two key followers, right? And so one of them, Moggallana, is usually on the Buddha's left. So according to the Ullambana Sutra, they were all staying at the same monastery for a while. It's probably, it might have been getting close to the rains. And so Moggallana was a very advanced meditator. Stories about him often have him really having psychic powers and things like that, and just amazing meditation abilities and stuff. And so he decided to find out while he was meditating, to find out what had happened to his parents, who had both passed away, and he wanted to know where they had been reborn. So he was meditating, decided he would go hunt for them. And so he found his father in one of the heavens. But his mother wasn't there. So he kept looking, and he found that she had been reborn a hungry ghost living in a really, really bad lower realm. So Moggallana, before he ordained, had been a wealthy trader, and he became a Buddhist monk. And when he ordained, he gave all of his money and all of his assets to his mother. And she reacted to this kindness by becoming very greedy and very stingy. And so now in the next world, she's sitting in this lower realm in the middle of a fire with a pot of boiling water on her head. And she had wasted away to practically nothing. She was just skin and bones because she had nothing that she could eat or drink. And so he prepared an offering for her, a bowl of rice. Well, she took the bowl and she scooped up a handful of food, but before it could enter her mouth, it turned into burning coals. So Moggallana was just overwhelmed by sadness when he saw this. And so he went to the Buddha in tears, wanting to know if there anything he could do to help his mother. And the Buddha explained that his mother had lived a pretty bad life. She had done some pretty bad things. And so her offenses were deep and firmly rooted in her consciousness. And although his filial piety was so profound that it resounded through heaven and earth, all the heavenly spirits were not going to be enough to help his mother. And the Buddha said, but the awesome power of the assembled Sangha, the monks, nuns, and lay supporters from the 10 directions, can help her. But that's what will be necessary for her freedom to be attained. So when the Buddha was alive, his monks would find out where he was as the rainy season came closer, and then they would assemble there with him for the rainy season, which lasts about 3.5 months. And so they would all be meditating together and listening to the Dharma and so on. And all these exceptional people, some of whom were already arhats, completely enlightened, would be doing good things all at once. And so this would mean that there's a whole lot of merit being accumulated, a lot of results of good actions being accumulated. And the Buddha said, wait till the 15th day of the 7th month, which is when they'll all be there practicing. And at that time, make an offering to your ancestors. And he gave them the verses to use. He said, for the sake of 7 generations of ancestors, your current parents, and those in distress, you should gather food of the 100 flavors and 5 kinds of fruit, basins for washing and rinsing, incense, oil lamps and candles, mattresses and bedding. Take the sweetest, prettiest things in the world and place them in a bowl and offer it to the assembled monks, those of great virtue of the 10 directions. And so, in other words, you're gonna give the best stuff that you can find to these monks who are practicing together during the rains and generating all this merit. And you would offer this for the sake of your ancestors. And then he went on to explain the process of doing this. And he said that Moggallana's ancestors would then be able to move about and eat and dress themselves as if they were humans, freed from the life of ghosts. And so when the time came, the Buddha commanded all the monks who were there to recite mantras and vows for the sake of the donors' families going back 7 generations. And so after practicing meditation, they accepted the food that was offered. And at that instant, Moggallana's mother obtained freedom from suffering as a hungry ghost. And he was very happy about that. And then he said to the Buddha, could other followers do the same thing? And the Buddha was very pleased with this question. And he said, yes. He said that if Buddhist monastics and lay followers should make offerings like this at this time of year on behalf of their ancestors, then their parents, if living, will have long, happy lives. Excuse me. And their departed ancestors, going back 7 generations, will transcend their existence as hungry ghosts and be reborn among the devas. But here's the passage I like best. He said, those disciples of the Buddha who practice filial devotion must in every moment of consciousness maintain the thought of their parents, including 7 generations of ancestors. So that's asking a lot. You know, in order for this to be effective, if you're practicing filial devotion, if you're making offerings on behalf of your ancestors, then you have to maintain thoughts of them, including 7 generations of ancestors. So that's an interesting practice, this idea of keeping your ancestors in mind. To practice filial devotion in every moment sounds like a big commitment, and it is. It's important to take the time to be grateful to our parents and ancestors, because if you think about it, we owe them quite a debt. The Pali word for gratitude literally translates as knowing what has been done. So we all know our parents are responsible for our lives, but then when we look at what's been done by them on our behalf, it can be pretty amazing. So the average infant goes through about 4,000 diapers a year. I was surprised when I read that, but that's what the diaper companies say, 4,000 diapers a year. So somebody, most likely your mothers, changed more than 4,000 of your dirty diapers in the first year of your life. Think about changing 4,000 dirty diapers. Does that sound right? I found that statistic somewhere. That seems like an awful lot. That would mean more than 10 diapers a day. Is that true? It's been a while since my son was that age. Anyway, and then think, how many meals did your mother and father provide for you before you were able to buy your own food? I figured it out once for me, probably about 20,000 meals. Think about it. If a friend offered to buy you lunch 20,000 times, you'd think, boy, that's a really good friend. Well, the Buddha considered this gratitude so important that he literally felt that someone who was unthankful had no integrity. And he talked about the importance of gratitude to our parents. He said, even if you were to carry your mother on one shoulder and your father on the other for 100 years, you wouldn't repay your parents. So being grateful to your ancestors goes beyond just your parents, though. For your parents to be there for you, their parents had to take care of them. And the Buddha said, that the merit would benefit 7 generations of ancestors. So for me to be here talking to you today, my ancestors that many generations ago, I think it was about that many generations ago, left places like England and Ireland to come to this strange country and work to establish lives here. It was a very hard life. And no doubt your ancestors made similar efforts and sacrifices so that you could be here today in a safe place practicing Buddhism. A lot of Buddhists also consider the importance of their teachers and other significant people during this time. And I think that's a good idea. If you look closely at your life, you'll realize that you have accomplished nothing without help from others. So at the Sart temple, at the Sart ceremony at the Thai temple, people make offerings during an alms round. They'll go for refuge, take the precepts and things like that to make merit, which they then dedicate to their ancestors. And then some Buddhist cultures will stop eating meat for a month, things like that, where people will buy animals and birds and fish just to release them so they don't get eaten, at least not by people. In Japanese Buddhism, we observe Oban, and we've done this for a number of years at the prison. Not this year because we can't go in, but it's one of the most meaningful services we do there. And during that service, we do a lot of chanting the names of bodhisattvas and teachers and that sort of thing. And then each inmate gets a piece of joss paper, which is coarse paper, sometimes with like gold printed on it, stuff like that. And they write the names of deceased parents, or ancestors, teachers, good friends that they've lost, and things like that. And then it's burned as an offering. And the idea is that when you burn it, the gold becomes available for your loved one's use. So in prison, a lot of these guys have no contact with their families anymore. And most of them weren't able to attend their loved ones' funerals. If their loved ones died while they were in prison, then, they couldn't go. And so it's hard to imagine what that must be like for someone. And so for many, the Oban ceremony or something like that is their only chance to feel close to people that they've been so separated from for so long. So if you want to repay your ancestors today, I encourage you to make offerings on their behalf. You can feed the hungry ghosts. You can offer them candles, which helps light their way in the darkness. So just light a candle for them. Anything charitable that you do, you can do in the name of your parents and ancestors. The Buddha once said that one way to express your gratitude was by helping your ancestors and teachers develop conviction, virtue, generosity, and discernment. So we can't give someone else those characteristics, but we can develop those qualities in ourselves. So to repay your parents, be a person of integrity. Learn the teachings, practice what we learn so we can spread the good influence from these lessons to others. You learn from being grateful for your parents' love and compassion, to be harmless in your dealings and live compassionate, charitable lives. And so that lets the compassion that you received spread through the world. And that way you transform the goodness that you received from your ancestors into goodness for all. And so the sacrifices made on your behalf then benefit countless beings. So to close, I just want to offer some verses from a scripture entitled Hungry Shades Outside the Walls, which I really like this sutra a lot. Outside the walls they stand, and at crossroads, at doorposts they stand, returning to their old homes. Thus those who feel sympathy for their dead relatives give timely donations of proper food and drink, thinking, may this be for our relatives, may our relatives be happy. For there in the ghost realm, there's no farming, no commerce, no money. They live on what is given here. As water raining on a hill flows down to the valley, even so does what is given here benefit the dead. He gave to me, she acted on my behalf. They were my relatives, companions, friends. That's how you should reflect while making this offering. And when this offering is shared with the spiritual community, it works for its long-term benefit. The merit you've acquired is not slight. So thank you for being here. I'll do the dedication And then if you have any other questions, you can ask them. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now, and offering flowers, candles, and incense, hearing the Dharma and training the mind. Great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, to the 16 guardians and all protectors of the Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, to all ancestors of the Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance, that all karma be resolved in the mind, flower, bloom, and eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha. May their vows be fully realized. May they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for those suffering from violence and those who grieve for them, for those living in oppression, for all who are imprisoned who should be free, for all refugees from violence, hunger, and catastrophe, man-made or natural. We pray for the health and well-being of those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, and those ministering to those afflictions. We pray for those suffering from COVID-19, those working to protect and treat them, and those grieving for those lost to this pandemic. Sata